As the calendar flipped to 1960, America found itself in the grip of a mild but stubborn recession that had begun the previous spring. Factories hummed slower, unemployment climbed to around 7%, and families tightened their belts amid whispers of economic worry that would shadow the year's most pivotal moments. Yet beneath the surface of these challenges, seeds of profound change were taking root, from lunch counters in the South to spy planes over distant skies, reshaping the nation and its place in a turbulent world. The year opened with the echoes of the 1950s prosperity fading, but it was in February that a spark ignited the civil rights movement in ways no one could have predicted. On February 1st, 4 black college students at North Carolina A&T State University walked into a Woolworth-esque lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and politely refused to leave after being denied service because of their skin color. They sat quietly, sipping from straws in empty glasses, as white patrons stared and store managers fumed. What started as a simple act of defiance exploded into a wave of sit-ins across the South, drawing in thousands of students, black and white, who challenged segregated businesses from Nashville to Atlanta. By summer, over 70,000 young people had joined the protests, turning lunch counters into battlegrounds for equality and forcing America to confront the ugliness of Jim Crow laws head-on. These weren't just demonstrations. They were a youth-led revolution, proving that ordinary courage could dismantle extraordinary injustice. Across the Atlantic, events in South Africa amplified the urgency back home. On March 21st, in the township of Sharpeville, South African police opened fire on thousands of unarmed black protesters, demonstrating against oppressive past laws, killing 69 and wounding over 180. The massacre sent shockwaves around the world, drawing UN condemnation and spotlighting apartheid's brutality. In the United States, it struck a raw nerve, highlighting the hypocrisy of a nation preaching freedom abroad while enforcing segregation at home. Civil rights leaders seized on the tragedy to rally support, pressuring the government to align its foreign policy with its domestic ideals, a tension that would simmer through the decade. By April, the momentum from Greensboro coalesced into something more organized. On the 15th through 17th, at a conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, student activists founded the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, empowering young black voices to lead the fight for voting rights and desegregation. This grassroots group would become a powerhouse, coordinating protests and sit-ins that exposed the moral rot of inequality to a nation glued to its televisions. But while domestic fires burned, the Cold War cast a long, icy shadow over 1960. On May 1st, high above Soviet airspace, a U-2 spy plane piloted by Francis Gary Powers was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, capturing the American reconnaissance mission on the front pages of every newspaper. Powers survived the crash and was paraded as a trophy by Nikita Khrushchev, who used the incident to torpedo a planned summit in Paris between President Dwight Eisenhower and Soviet leaders. The embarrassment stung deeply, revealing the high-stakes espionage game between superpowers and fueling fears of nuclear brinkmanship. Eisenhower's administration scrambled to contain the fallout, but the event hardened anti-communist resolve and set the stage for a more aggressive US stance in the years ahead. That same month brought glimmers of scientific triumph amid the gloom. On May 9th, the Food and Drug Administration approved Enovid, the first oral contraceptive pill, marking a quiet revolution in women's health and autonomy. Though initially prescribed only to married women for menstrual issues, it soon symbolized liberation, reshaping family planning and gender roles in ways that rippled through American society. Just days later, on May 16th, physicist Theodore Maiman demonstrated the world's first laser using a synthetic ruby, a breakthrough that promised to transform medicine, communications, and warfare. Protests didn't stop at lunch counters. On May 13th in San Francisco, students and professors rallied against the House Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC, decrying its McCarthy-era tactics as relics of fear-mongering. Police responded with fire hoses and billy clubs, injuring dozens and arresting hundreds, a stark reminder that the fight for free speech was as fierce as the one for racial justice. As summer arrived, economic stirrings hinted at brighter days. On July 1st in Rogers, Arkansas, Sam Walton opened the very first Walmart store, a discount haven that would eventually redefine retail and American consumerism. 4 days later, on the 4th of July, the Stars and Stripes unfurled with 50 stars for the first time, honoring Hawaii's recent admission as the 50th state and symbolizing a more inclusive union. Yet the real drama unfolded on the political stage, where two titans, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, vied for the presidency in a race that gripped the nation. The recession's shadow loomed large, with voters demanding jobs and stability, while civil rights clashes and Cold War scares demanded bold leadership. On September 26th, 70 million Americans tuned in for the first ever televised presidential debate, a spectacle that changed campaigning forever. Kennedy, youthful and tanned, projected calm vigor from his Chicago studio, while Nixon, pale and perspiring from a recent illness, appeared weary. Radio listeners thought Nixon won, but TV viewers sided with JFK, proving the power of image in the television age. The debates humanized the candidates, exposing Kennedy's charisma and Nixon's intensity, and set a new standard for media-driven elections. Beyond America's borders, 1960 was the year of Africa, as 17 nations shook off colonial chains from Nigeria to Somalia, thrusting the continent into the global spotlight. For the United States, this decolonization frenzy was a double-edged sword, a chance to court new allies against Soviet expansion, but a minefield of instability. Nowhere was this clearer than in the Congo, where independence from Belgium on June 30th spiraled into chaos by July. A mutiny in the army led to widespread violence, the secession of mineral-rich Katanga province, and fears that Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba leaned toward Moscow. The US backed a UN intervention to stabilize the region, funneling aid and intelligence to prevent communist footholds, marking the start of a shadowy proxy struggle that would haunt American foreign policy for years. November 8th brought the climax. In the closest election since 1884, John Fitzgerald Kennedy edged out Richard Nixon by a mere 112,927 votes out of 68 million cast, securing 303 electoral votes to Nixon's 219. At 43, Kennedy became the youngest elected president and the first Catholic, shattering barriers and igniting hope for a new frontier of progress. His victory, fueled by urban voters, labor unions, and a restless youth, promised vigor in facing recession, racism, and red threats, though allegations of voter fraud in Illinois and Texas would linger like a bitter aftertaste. As December dawned, the birth control pill hit pharmacies, available initially to married women, but destined to empower generations. In Rome, the Summer Olympics showcased American athletes like a brash 18-year-old Cassius Clay, who claimed gold in boxing, foreshadowing his rise as Muhammad Ali and a symbol of black excellence. Even in entertainment, Elvis Presley mustered out of the army on March 23rd, ready to reclaim rock and roll's throne. 1960 was a year of fractures and firsts, where economic pains tested resilience. Civil rights warriors lit the path to justice, and Cold War gambles raised the stakes of survival. From Greensboro's counters to Congo's jungles, America grappled with its ideals versus its realities, electing a leader who vowed to ask what the nation could do for its people. As the decade unfolded, these threads would weave into the fabric of transformation, reminding us that history isn't made in isolation. It's forged in the bold choices of ordinary moments.